right onto Dover Road.
Rain becoming more widespread across much of England and Wales, heaviest in the west, dry, bright and mild in the southeast, bright spells and showers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, a high of 13 Celsius. From Global's newsroom, I'm Holly Harris.
Sharon, I don't know how we'll cope without you.
Continue for 1.5 miles.
Maternity cover. A new arrival who can step in until Sharon returns.
We'll see you next year.
Indeed can help him find great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Indeed helps you quickly attract, screen, and virtually interview great candidates, all through an easy-to-use dashboard. To start hiring, visit indeed.com/try today.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Good morning, it's 3 minutes after 7 on Monday, February the 28th. Going nuclear. President Putin orders Russia's nuclear deterrent forces onto high alert. Greatly escalating tensions, of course, on a global footing. But back to Ukraine, back to Kyiv. Here's the mayor, Vitaly Klitschko. Yes, the former heavyweight champion boxer now turned at the city's mayor, saying he's ready to fight again.
We are not aggressive wars to anyone, but if some army coming to us, we will be fight.
Here in the UK, what about the idea of a sort of foreign brigade, as it were? Brits going over to fight. Liz Truss speaking to the BBC.
I do support that, and of course that is something that people can make their own decisions about. And absolutely, if people want to support that struggle, I would support them in doing that.
Financially, Norway says its $1.3 trillion sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest, will disinvest from Russia. Germany announces a sharp rise in defence spending as the European Union says it will provide fighter jets and other military kit. The European Union also blacking out Russia today. And staying with the money, BP decides to disinvest, as it were, pull out £20 billion stake from Rosneft. Here's Tom Wilson, energy correspondent for the Financial Times.
Summation of a 30-year relationship. Had its ups and downs, but it ultimately been incredibly lucrative for BP.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
But no one, despite the dispute, the fight or the will within inside the people of Ukraine. But later I'll be asking, as it suggested, that some sort of foreign brigade, as it were, is put together. Would you be prepared to go and fight? And the wisdom of that, because although your motives are absolutely impeccable to do that, you do need a bit of training to be effective, I would have thought, in that particular area. Indeed, could I make the point that if you didn't know what you were doing, you could actually be a potential menace? More on that in a moment, and indeed we go to Ukraine in just a second. Let's just briefly catch up with one of the main players who've been saying. First off, is Ukrainian President Zelensky a part of his statement most recent yesterday?
I don't want any citizen of Ukraine had any doubts that I didn't do everything I could. And when our soldiers are fighting, the president is here, the head of the president office is here, the prime minister is here, the army is here, the commander-in-chief is here. We all will be defending our country.
And while his bravery has never been in dispute, even braver now, as it is reported that effectively special squads have been dispatched from Russia to get into Ukraine, to get into Kyiv, specifically now to kill the Ukrainian president and his family, but he's staying put. There's also here, I understand, staying put is the mayor of Kyiv, the former heavyweight champion boxer Vitaly Klitschko, rolling up his sleeves for another fight.
Every Ukrainian support this war. This war against the Russians, because we are not aggressive wars to anyone. But if some army coming to us, we will be fight. We fight for our independence, for our family, for our future.
Here in the UK, having attended a mass at the Ukrainian cathedral, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said this to waiting journalists.
If he wants to stop, if he wants to withdraw, if he wants to negotiate, that's...
In In 300 yards, keep right to continue towards Tons Lane, A355.
There's nothing I've seen so far in his behaviour that leads me to think that he could possibly be sincere. But if he is, then we should pursue every avenue.
Let's go straight to Ukraine now and to Ian Birrell, who's foreign correspondent reporting for the Daily Mail, has a big piece, the whole of a page inside the Daily Mail today.
Keep right.
Choktiv, if I'm saying that correctly, in western Ukraine. Tell us exactly where that is, how far that is from Kyiv, and what's happening on the ground there. Ian, good morning.
Good morning. It's about 200 miles from Kyiv, down south of Lviv, maybe. So yeah, it's at the moment it's relatively unscathed by the war, but it shows that even in a place like this, everyone is answering the president's call to prepare. They expect to be attacked by Belarus troops here, and they think they're going to come over the border in the next day or two.
What preparations are they making, Ian? I see photographs in your article.
Well, they've got set up a military council under martial law. In one day, they built a massive checkpoint at the main entry point. They're doing similar as all the other entry points coming in. They called up 500 military reservists into a special unit. They're training other volunteers in use of grenades, in use of Molotov cocktails. In a slightly unusual twist, the police in the town are training people how to make and fire and throw Molotov cocktails.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
They're organising to take back into Kiev. I met one 25-year-old woman who just fled Kiev with her boyfriend. She instantly got here to her hometown. They set up an online thing to see what people need in Kiev, and they were ready to drive back into the city to take this stuff back that's been donated here. There's food for refugees. 15% of this town have actually left and fled over the borders. So in many ways, it's a very typical example of how, in this incredibly short space of time, an entire European country has been transformed by invasion.
Ian, you've covered a lot of events in a lot of war zones down the years. Do you see this spirit growing and...
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
Some fear starting to spread. Ian?
Well, it's very hard to read from one particular place. One of the things about war is you can only really see exactly what's going on in the immediate vicinity. But it does seem from all the reports and the fight back that people are fighting back hard, that the Russians are not getting through as quickly as they want. I mean, I saw that a town called Port fell yesterday, which I think is the first place I've been to while I've been here for the past 6 weeks that has actually fallen. And then you see something like Kharkiv yesterday, where I woke up seeing the troops going to the former capital and the second city, just 25-30 miles from the Russian border. And then you see that they were September troops, which are the special forces who took Crimea. And then you see how quickly they're kicked out again. You know, it's deeply, deeply impressive to see the resolve of this country, the determination of the people, and their desire to just be off this existential threat to their land.
Look after yourself, Ian. Thank you, Ian Birrell, foreign correspondent reporting for the Daily Mail. The whole piece in the paper today. Interesting, they don't call them Molotov cocktails over there, because Molotov was, of course, a Russian politician. I won't translate what it is because they don't speak Ukrainian, but it translates as happiness cocktails. That's what they're calling them now, because they won't use the word Molotov. Should we talk about Russian politics? Should we talk about Russian politicians at 11 minutes after 7 with Christopher Brannigan, who's senior fellow at the Policy Exchange, was senior advisor to Boris Johnson as PM and defence lead in the number 10 policy unit. Can you give us your interpretation of what President Putin might be trying to achieve by moving up the level of nuclear alert? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick. Certainly with Putin's shift toward putting his nuclear forces, deterrent forces, as he calls them, on increased state, I mean, it's escalatory and it's certainly unnecessary, but it is predictable. I mean, this is President Putin that we're talking about. He's playing into the way the Russian military doctrine has always been utilised. It's always been within their conceptual approach. Although I have to say that looking at the faces of his military chiefs sitting beside him yesterday when he made the announcement, it didn't look universally popular in downtown Moscow. It increases the dangers because it introduces more chances of things going wrong. Both sides would realise that. But it's designed to be a deterrent, not a coercive strategy.
This, I assume, is a man who cannot lose face, who cannot back down. We're going to need a medium, aren't we, between the Ukrainians and the Russians to try and find him some route out of this.
We are. I mean, it's interesting that there is a very coherent view which says that part of stepping up the scale of what happens allows him to escalate. Look how brave I've been, look how I respond towards the West, look at how strong Russia is, in order to de-escalate. Look how clever a politician I am, look how diplomatic I'm going to be.
Do you buy that?
I bring this back to find its way out.
Do you buy that, Christopher?
Well, his assumptions, Nick, so far seem to have been, completely delusional. I mean, one would hope that he is surrounded, as all political leaders are, by military advisors who will tell him, this is what this course of action means, this is what this course of action means. And most of the things that he has thought were going to happen up to now, a low-cost victory in Ukraine, that Ukraine will be ineffective in its response to all of them, none of those things have planned out. So listening to Ian's report a moment ago, you can see where that resistance is occurring in Ukraine. That means that none of this is going to plan. There's some really bizarre things going on that seem to have undone the way that they thought about this.
Christopher, we'll talk again. Thanks for your input. Christopher Brannigan, Senior Fellow at Policy Exchange, served as Senior Advisor to Boris Johnson as PM and was Defence Lead in the No. 10 Policy Unit. Now, the idea of de-escalation or standing down will, of course, be moved forward. There are talks later today between Russian and Ukrainian delegates in Belarus. Let's turn to Svetlana Galishchuk, who is former member of the Ukrainian Parliament, now Foreign Policy Advisor to Ukraine's current Deputy Prime Minister. And Svetlana joins us from Western Ukraine. Thank you for taking the call. I trust you're safe this morning. What hope can we set on these talks in your view? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I think that Putin thought that it will be a victorious war in a couple of days, but it turned out to be a humiliation for him, isolation and loss of his authority. However, it doesn't go without a price for us, for Ukrainians, of course. Within 5 days of war, we lost more than 300 people, and they report that at least 15 of them are kids. And we have a refugee crisis already on the borders between Ukraine and our western neighbors. So hundreds of thousands, closer to 400,000 people already left the country, and there are huge lines on the borders. People are really suffering. It's devastating I can assure you, for every single Ukrainian. At the same time, I just like to say this to you, that President demonstrates incredible leadership, and he's backed not only by our courageous army today, but he's also backed by 40 million Ukrainian nation. So I think that Putin just has no chance whatsoever. The negotiations about so-called puppet government just not going to work, because even if, and I reiterate, even if Zelensky would somehow surrender and agree to this puppet government, that would be just impossible from a population's point of view. That would be a government of kamikaze, because every single person here in this country would be an enemy to someone who would come and would try to suggest that he or she can run this country.
Let me ask you, if I may, Svetlana, as you're close, I think you're in Belagovo in Western Ukraine. I hope I said that correctly. I don't know how close you are to the border or to the action, but do you feel frightened? Do you feel angry? Do you feel defiant? What emotion would you say, Svetlana?
I feel guilty. I feel guilty that I left my home, my Kyiv, and so many people stayed there and protecting my city. And to be honest, I'm seriously considering to have a chance to come back there and to send a message to my neighbors, to just people, to politicians, to civil society, to those who are in the territorial defense units, and to our army, that population is supporting them. I left out of safety considerations, because I was worried that Kyiv may be encircled, there will be no way to get out. So we left with my family. But at the same time, I also want to say this, that I don't want to leave the country at all. I am not ready to be called refugee. I want to be a responsible citizen who is making something little, a small input to protect this home, because we will not immigrate, all of us, This is our home, this is our land. We are free, peaceful, democratic country. We need to protect it.
All right. The very best of luck to you if you do choose to go back, or wherever you are. I wish you and your family safe times. Thank you, Svetlana Yalishchuk was served in the Ukrainian parliament, is now foreign policy advisor to the current deputy prime minister of Ukraine. 7:17 straight to the LBC News headlines, a little bit late. Holly Harris.
Boris Johnson says Britain will do all it can to get more arms to the Ukraine as Russian forces continue to threaten the capital, Kiev. The UN is to hold a rare emergency session later today to discuss the international response to the invasion. Moscow is opening its foreign exchange and money market 3 hours later than usual this morning after the ruble fell to an all-time low following financial sanctions. The weather, rain for most parts of the UK, driest and brightest in the southeast, a high of 13 Celsius.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Long delays on the M25 anti-clockwise from junction 22 at London Coney to 20 at Kings Langley, and that's because a car's broken down and one lane is closed. Also delays on the M11 southbound just after junction 7 at Harlow, where there's been an accident and one lane is closed. Delays of about half an hour on the A2 westbound from the tollgate services up to the M25 junction. That was after an accident, but all the lanes are now back open. In Wembley, East Lane and Wembley Hill Road are both closed. That's following a fire in a building. One lane remains closed on the North Circular Road eastbound at Staples Corner, and on the Underground there are minor delays on the Circle Line because of a shortage of trains.
This is LBC.
Driving is not a game. If you tailgate the car in front, the closer you get, the less time you'll have to react. Don't be a space invader. Leave at least a 2-second gap. Search National Highways for more information.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
Take care now. If you're a PCO driver working with companies like Uber, Bolt, Ola and Free now in and around London, you'll be very interested in Simple Self-Drive. They're one of the leading providers of private hire PCO vehicle rentals and offer flexible contracts for fully electric, executive and hybrid vehicles. Most of their cars are less than 2 years old, and for peace of mind include insurance, breakdown and maintenance. And the first week's free for all...
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Minimum 6 months contract, T's and C's apply.
Hey business types, listen up. There's a whole new way to keep your peeps better connected. Circle Loop, the smart new cloud-based phone system that's easy to set up and use cost-effectively on devices you already have. It works on your laptop or desktop with call forwarding to your mobile, so you'll never miss a call. Work smarter and keep all your peeps in the loop for less. Get your free 7-day trial at circleloop.com. Circle Loop. Now you're talking.
The automotive industry talks a lot about zero emissions. But what does that really mean? At Volvo, we believe in zero omissions, in total transparency and honesty. If you head down to your local Volvo retailer from the 4th to the 6th of March, that's what you'll get. The unbiased truth about moving to electric. So be one of the first to test drive the new fully electric Volvo C40 Recharge or any of our other electrified models. Just book online and we'll be ready to answer your questions with zero emissions.
Zero emissions refers specifically to tailpipe emissions.
The highway code has changed to help protect people walking, cycling or horse riding. However you travel, you have a responsibility to help keep those more at risk on the road safe. We've updated the rules for passing people cycling and horse riding to give them plenty of space, and people crossing, waiting to cross or cycling straight ahead have priority at junctions. These are just some of the changes we all need to make now. Check the changes. Let's keep each other safe. Visit gov.uk/DFT/highway code changes to find out more. Changes to the highway code apply to Great Britain only.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:21, you're listening to LBC News breaking at this time. There have been some images from a US satellite tracking company of a massive Russian convoy heading towards Kyiv. It's said to be about 40 miles away. I've just seen the images of it. The convoy, it is 3-mile long military convoy. 3 miles of military vehicles. It's difficult to tell from the images. Obviously there's trucks carrying troops, but I can't see whether there are tanks as well. It's very difficult, it's a bit blurry. But you can measure it's 3 miles and it's currently 40 miles from Kyiv. We'll obviously keep you posted on that, but I would imagine at some point it's going to encounter some pretty stiff resistance, as they have already. So we'll keep an eye on that. Quickly through the front pages of the newspapers. Gareth, you'll be the first call on developments over the weekend. And we're going to look at this a little bit later. Here we are, the Daily Telegraph. Putin issues nuclear threat. The Daily Mail, world outrage. Putin makes nuclear threat. The Times, Putin puts nuclear force on alert. And I think it's the Sun, yes, mad Vlad goes nuclear. What we're going to look at later is, and here we are, Metro, which of course actually younger people might pick up. Vlad nukes on standby, and the Guardian, nuclear force on high alert, and the Financial Times, Putin puts nuclear forces on high alert. Coming up later in the show, if you have children, how do you, and they happen to see your newspaper, or they see it in the stores, or they listen to the radio, or they see on TV and they start hearing people talk about nuclear war, it's pretty chilling for them. So how do you prepare your children? How do you keep your children calm when the words nuclear threat, nuclear warfare are being bandied around? That's later in the hour. Just to finish off, by the way, also on the front page of the LBC website, there's a very handy map, because as things develop, it is helpful to know just exactly where these cities are. The headline is Blasts heard in Kyiv and Kharkiv, Ukraine saying the next 24 hours are crucial, but there's a map which you probably want to go
in 300 yards at Junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
A very powerful picture of a dad saying, quotes, a tearful goodbye to his young son, as he, the boy, boards a train to safety with his mum and sister. The man has chosen
exit at Junction 3.
But understandably, he's packing his wife and children off to a safer part of the country. The Daily Express characterized it as the free world versus Putin.
In a quarter of a mile at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 4th exit onto the Parkway, A312.
Around it now, hasn't he? I mean, some of his closest colleagues have had their villas in Italy taken away from them. We have the drama over the Chelsea football team as Roman Abramovich putting into some kind of trust or whatever. Lastly, dash to the borders. This, I tell you, my friends, this is like going back to the days of World War II, or I don't know, even the pogroms before. Their queues stretched for 25 miles. Refugees try to cross neighbouring countries, and there is a queue of, I think it is all actually, women and children bundled up against the cold, trying to get across the border. How many decades, centuries even have we seen those pictures? Gareth in Budapest. What's the local media saying in Budapest, Gareth? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Nick. How's things? Yeah, driving my son to school this morning, I heard an announcement on the Hungarian radio. Lots of people trying to cross the border, obviously, here. Not as many as in Poland and Slovakia, but still lots of people trying to come across the 3 main border crossings that we have. But
yeah,
there are language issues for Ukrainian people crossing into Hungary. So on the radio this morning, they're asking people who can speak Russian, Ukrainian to travel to the border.
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
So I heard a lot of things over the weekend about how people can help, like what can you do. So I would say if you speak Hungarian, Ukrainian, maybe you come from...
Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
Region, that border region where your last caller that I heard is calling from. Like,
yes.
That would be a way that people can help.
What's the spirit in Hungary? Because I have to say, here in the parts of London I was in at the weekend, there's tremendous support. Some would argue there should be more, but there's tremendous support within England and London. What's the level of support, would you say, in Budapest or Hungary, Gareth?
Yeah, here too, absolutely. And thank God the government here has moved in line with the EU and is saying that they won't block any of the sanctions, like, because, as you know, people had been saying before this all kicked off that, Orban was potentially one of the supporters of Putin. So yeah, I think people here are, very sad, very supportive, and thinking about what they can do to...
Gareth, stay in touch. Thank you for the perspective on a country so close to the main source of conflict. Gareth, look after yourself and your family. 7:26. Now, there are other stories, but actually, in a way, it feeds into this story as well, because there's a lot happening in the world of airlines. If you've tried to fly with British Airways, you'll know there have been hideous problems over the weekend, and also, of course, developments as regards Russia, with airlines being banned as well. All the details now. Lisa Minnow is travel editor for the